And boom, that was fast. My name is Hiko Simon. This is Tokyo Tonight. It's, of course, Tokyo tomorrow. Right now, it is Monday. Oh, sorry, that's going to make a terrible noise. Let me just put the microphone here. Hopefully, that is okay there. Am I making sound? That's a good point. It wasn't working last week. It is working this week. Okay, cameras, lights, everything. What could possibly go wrong? My name is Hiko Simon. This is Tokyo Tonight. It is Tokyo 11:30 a.m., 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and right here in Seattle, where I am right now, it is 7:30 p.m. I have had quite a day today. Darren Shmee asking, how are my legs feeling? That's a very personal question. They're feeling bad. I was fast. I was good. I set a pretty good time today. I'll get into that. But yes, I just ran my first ever half marathon. Some of you might recall I unintentionally ran 100 meters short of not even 100 meters, it was like 50 meters short of a half marathon accidentally in Tokyo once. And someone pointed out to me, did you realize that you nearly ran a half marathon distance? And I was like, no. And they said, if you had known, would you have continued for the extra 50 meters? And I thought about it. And I was no, because I was feeling miserable and my legs were sore. And the run today was like that a little bit. Although I did finish, and I don't know. I think I registered saying that I'd run a slower pace, but on the day it was cold. I felt like I needed to run fast just to warm up, and I ran a crazy pace. Actually, I ran a pace I would be happy, like I would consider fast for 6K, and I kept it up for 21.15K or whatever it is. So really happy with that. But I'll talk a bit about my adventures today. But after the run, particularly the last part of the run, you go uphill, and my Achilles, the backs of my legs. What happens after about 15 kilometers, or really after about 10, but particularly after 15, is it stops being a matter of fitness. It's never a problem for breathing or getting tired for me. It's a problem of joints starting to hurt, and other things start to happen. And I could feel my leg muscles getting really tight. Like, I think if I'd stayed I couldn't have done a marathon at all. Something would have snapped. And my legs were in bad shape when I crossed the line, although I ran fast all the way across the line. But when I was going back to the car park afterwards, I was going down this hill of stairs, and somebody saw me and commented. It's something I do like about America. It's something I like about Australia and America is how strangers will make friendly conversation. It's something New Zealanders don't do as much, and Japanese don't do it all. Well, not in Tokyo. Outside of Tokyo, they might. But someone saw me kind of saying, F on every step. I was extremely gingerly on the steps going down after the thing. He said, oh yeah, that's gotta hurt. I went and iced them off. Where, again, the wonderful place that I'm staying has a gym and a pool, and it has a jacuzzi and a plunge pool. I've learned, while the jacuzzi is wonderful, it's really bad for muscles when your muscles are stretched and you've exercised to get into a jacuzzi. Where I've damaged myself, it's been after having a jacuzzi when my muscles have been sore and then exercising the next day. It's always bad. So I made a point today of not even getting in, even though it was freezing. It was only 2 degrees Celsius today when I ran this thing. I went back afterwards and I realized that, I might not be able to walk the rest of today if I don't ice up my legs, like get ice packs. And I thought, well, I can use the plunge pool. So I went and put my legs only into the freezing cold pool downstairs. Well, I'm still quasi hypothermic as it is. But it did help the legs. It was good. It got me good enough that I went running. So those legs, says Brad F. Anyway, wow, Kerberos Tenshi, Central European Standard Time, Germany there, 40:33 a.m. By the way, very sorry that the web seminar with Jel was cancelled, especially at that time of the night for you. Glad that you can join, but seriously, the show is recorded. You can watch it. I do appreciate you being here and commenting, but please do take care of yourself. Robert Old Dude, good to see you, Robert Old Dude. Boom, big bang, boom shakalaka. Yes, baby. All of those things. Waito-san, long time no see. How's it down in Saga? I believe this is Waito-san, the guy from South Africa down in Saga. Good to see you. Yeah, Chris Rodham, good to see you. Looking forward to my bad takes. All my takes are bad in a certain way, but yeah. My take on dual citizenship this week, which I think was kind of a bit of just a contrarian, me being a smartass kind of a take, but I will explain it. Not that the people who are offended will watch this, but I was told by multiple people, I normally agree with you, but this is a bad take, which made me feel bad. And I do that. My brain just works. That I always positively. I always try to see the other side. But negatively, I always try to stir shit, and that's what I did. And I offended some people, so I will address that. Yeah. But anyway, oh, those legs. Yeah, some people saw there was, I had someone take a photo of me at the finish line. It was freezing cold, right? And yes, I was wearing shorts. I was going to wear a singlet as well, but then I realized I'm going to die of hypothermia. So actually the Uniqlo hoodie that I was wearing, which I was planning to leave in my gear bag, I realized, no, I'm gonna need to wear this during the run. I didn't want to wear the full Canterbury jacket because it'd be too heavy. But yeah, I think it made my extremely. I've had several comments about how white my legs are. Somebody said he go get some sun, to which I said I'm in Seattle. I'm open to any suggestions about how to get sun. And yes, I would also comment that if the half marathon was, if you got extra points based on if it was some sort of a mixed half marathon bad 10 contest, yeah, I would rank much higher. I would actually probably be in the elite division, but as it was, I was I was just I would say above average regular runner with a bad tan and skinny white legs. What can I do? I was born with them. I've tried to have a life that emphasizes the qualities other than the color of my leg, because I'm not going to win contests, at least not good contests with those. Lysander 45. One of the reasons I stopped watching for ages was because you had to go to bed at 10 p.m. on Sunday if I've worked the next day. Since you're not working right now, I can enjoy the live show again. Well, plus of course it's 11:30 in the morning in Japan, so the time is probably better. Yeah, always good to have you in here, Lysander 45. I do appreciate that you can make it. And remember, again, I do like the company. I think it's a really fun part of the show, getting the interaction, but at the same time, yeah, I'm grateful when anyone watches and even when they comment during the week. By the way, I suppose a wall-mounted 60-inch TV, which again is wonderful, but it's not. I'm using it as a computer monitor, and I'm monitoring the chat by looking up at that. It's causing me to it looks like I'm praying or something, looking to the heavens every time there's a chat, which I guess in a way is kind of accurate. I wonder if there's some way I can enlarge the screen. If I play with the controls on the streaming software, I'm pretty sure nothing can technically go wrong, right? I have a pretty good record of not causing technical issues playing with the settings in the middle of the stream. Can I drag that down? How can I make this window view? Okay, what if I just get rid of the status bar, the source icons, and the source toolbar? Well, give me a moment. I am going to full screen interface. Okay. Let's get rid of those buttons. Oh, it's getting bigger. Just thinking, this way I can read off the screen, which means I'm not actually hurting my neck every time I read the comments. Multi-view, always on top, status bar. It is bigger. How do I get rid of these things down the bottom though? I know I can change this view. Okay, I shouldn't be playing with this now. I'm going to continue. By the way, one other thing I've been meaning to do that I haven't got. Oh, by the way, this shirt, I did wash it. I actually literally just pulled it out of the machine. This is what I got from the run. Honestly, probably a little bit too much to wear around Tokyo, but I figured, hey, it's a half marathon, and out of all the designs, this is probably believe it or not, this is the least loud design of all the t-shirts that they were handing out. It's extremely samurai pizza cats, but what can you do? Don't touch the center, you'll break. The 60-inch monitor is awesome. Although, see, the funny thing is, it's a TV. I've turned on the TV once when I've been in Seattle. I'm leading a complete Fortnite YouTube and using a VPN and watching NHK. This week I've not watched a lot of NHK, so I actually don't have a lot of Japanese news updates, although, as always, I've got enough topics to talk about. Yeah. Cobra Senshi, the chat is half the fun, and since I still don't have the job, it's fine to be awake this time of the day. Well, like I said, I'm glad that you're glad, but at the same time, do take care of yourself. I do appreciate you being here as well. Oh, have I figured out a way? Yeah, this will be terrible if I succeed at this. Okay, just a quick warning that I possibly am about to break the interface. But I just want to make it so that the chat is bigger on the OBS screen so that I can see the chat bigger here so I don't have to... Oh, there it is. Okay, give me a second. Yeah, sorry, squirrel. One thing about running, by the way, in Seattle, there are lots of squirrels. So, okay, I can now see. Cool. Anyway, so the chat is half the fun. Thank you. I bet you lunch that my legs are wider than yours. I'll take the bet. Well, although honestly, maybe I'll just take your word for it. Mine would make yours look tanned. Maddie, good to see you, Maddie. Glad that you can make it. Don't touch the setting. Too late, Matt. But I think it isn't broken anyway, so that is still okay. It is awesome. Looks clean. I like it. I suspect one of the creative person in the industry is materials that will lend itself to it. Suggest a new invention. Yeah. Why did I read that out loud? Good to see you believe in yourself. Glad that you can make it. Love late night TTs. Love doing late night TTs. I mean, right now, of course. Well, I guess it depending on where you are. I guess this probably is that. But yeah, give me one final moment just to arrange the things. Totally not going to break anything. Totally, this is fine. Okay, it still works. Good. So yeah. Anyway, it has been an interesting week. I must admit, one thing I didn't put into the topics, but I am meaning to talk about is I didn't watch live the TikTok hearings, and I don't talk about US politics very much. But I had some people pinging me like, "Have you seen these things? Like they're pretty outrageous." I assumed it would just be more of the usual stuff with all of the tech hearings, which is frankly the politicians grandstanding and trying to score points while unintentionally showing off that they don't know anything of what they're talking about, with regards to tech companies. Which isn't to say that there aren't legitimate things to criticize, but just that Congress doing it is just a circus. It was a particular the TikTok hearings. Geez, it made me feel sorry for TikTok. I don't watch TikTok. I don't really care, but at the same time, the precedent of censoring and banning TikTok in America, and just because it's parent company. I mean, again, the assumption that the CEO who was before Congress, who is of Asian extraction, is Chinese, and ask if he's a member of the CCP. He's Singaporean. He could be from New Zealand. He could be from Canada. It was just straight out, like directly racist, and like the worst kind of ignorant, racism. Yeah, it was actually pretty disturbing. So, yeah, I mean, to defend, and he made one legitimate point, which is anything that they're accusing TikTok of doing, well, TikTok hasn't really done, but there is knowledge that Google and Facebook have done worse things, and what's happening to them, like why. And it's a fair point. So I don't know. I found that the more that I caught up to it and saw what was actually going on, yeah, it was pretty messed up, actually. Anyway, so let's dive into it. I've got a lot of stuff, including stuff from today. I'll tell you this. I had a weird day today. I am so exhausted. I'll explain why as I go into the topics. Actually, that's more towards the end, isn't it? Maybe I'll just tell you about my day. I woke up at 6 a.m. I went for a half marathon at 7:30. I ran in less than 4 minutes 30 a kilometer for 21 kilometers. I felt terrible, but also, in order to get out to the university and not rely on a bus that I might miss and then miss the race, I rented I used the service KYTE Kite, where it's a bit like Zipcar, but they bring you the car, and you can rent. It's pretty cheap and affordable, and they bring you the car. It's really cool. And so I just went for the cheapest car that they have, a little hatchback. That all I needed was just some means of getting to the race, and I just needed to keep it overnight. So I just wanted it to be as cheap as possible. I think what happens with these rental cars in America, I've never had this happen in Japan, but I've had so many good experiences with rental cars in America. I've noticed that I think when they realize that you're a first-time customer, I think they prioritize upgrading you. This has happened to me like multiple times, and it's resulted in wonderful experiences. But yeah, so just like I was upgraded to the BMW the other day, I didn't think they had anything other than hatchbacks at this place, and the guy showed up in a Dodge Charger, and I did have on my list of cars that I'd like to try driving. Dodge Charger was one of them, like American, real American style muscle cars were there, Camaro, Corvette. To me, the cars that just look sort of fun. So, yeah, this guy said it's the same price, don't worry about it, it's yours. So I had this Dodge Challenger, and although I could barely walk, I also realized I got home and I showered and I iced my legs, and it was like 11:30, and I have to give the car back at 4. But I thought, well, I'm an idiot. I get this car. I have an American muscle car. If I don't drive it somewhere, I'm an idiot. So I did drive around a little bit yesterday, but yeah. So I thought after the race, well, 4 hours, how far can I go? So I got out Google Maps, and I kind of thought, okay, I can't push it too fine, but maybe like an hour and a half. So I went to the Olympic Peninsula, at 1 hour 45-minute drive. I found a lookout that had a nice view that I thought would be a nice place to go to. And I drove to it. I took a photo from the spot, which I just posted earlier. And I went through. There are a couple of Indian reservations or Native American reservations along the way. I just find those places sort of fascinating. So I drove into a couple. I wanted to see a museum, but it was closed. Then I realized I was tight on time, so I raced over to the spot. Lovely spot. And I see why I really want to take my time and go through the Olympic Peninsula west of Seattle. However, I had 2 hours. It was a 1 hour 45-minute drive, and I had 2 hours to get back. So, so I drove back, and I'd spotted a great coffee and burger place I wanted to try on the way. So I went and I stopped there as I went back. But they were so slow taking the orders. The person in front of me just ordered ice cream, and they said the ice cream's going to take 10 minutes to bring out. I just realized, oh, if I order ice cream and a coffee, I'm not going to make it back in time to give the car back. So I gave up on eating and coffee, and I got into the car thinking I'll stop somewhere on the way if I can make up some time on the way. But because Google was telling me that I could make it, but I was going through afternoon traffic returning to Seattle. So basically, I couldn't eat. I couldn't stop the car. So the car almost ran out of fuel, and I almost ran out of fuel. Between 6 a.m. when I had breakfast, I didn't eat until like 4:30 when I returned the car, but I had a wonderful drive. I commented that I drove mostly responsibly. There were a couple of times, like when I was at the traffic lights, I'd heard that these Dodge Challengers are kind of dangerous in that they're a bit overpowered, and if you floor the accelerator, they get all squirrely. The back end spins everywhere. And I thought, oh, that sounds terrible. So I did it, and it was fun. And yeah, even on the highway, it's like, you want to overtake somebody, and so you floor it for a minute, and all of us, like 2 seconds later, you're going like double the speed of everybody else. And yeah, I didn't do that the whole way, but it was just where it made sense and was responsible. I did occasionally floor it, and I didn't get up to top speed or anything in the car, but it was great. It was everything that I wanted. Plus, driving in the Olympic Peninsula, you get some proper roads. Honestly, the handling obviously is not the greatest part of the car, but it's a sports car. It was wonderful. So I did that, but I had no coffee. I hadn't eaten. I'd run a half marathon and I hadn't eaten, and my legs were barely functioning. And I drove for 4 hours today. So I went and had a pizza that I think was possibly the best pizza of my whole life, just because I was so hungry. It was good. It was a good pizza. I went to what was it called? Special Pie. What was it called? That no, it was something pie, greatest pie, something like that. It's a pizza place anyway in Seattle, and it was good. I had a root beer. Because I think if I'd had a shandy, I would have passed out at that point, and I was possibly dehydrated. So yeah, I had that. I came back here, I put on the washing, and I set up the show, and I'm doing it now. So yeah, I'm a bit out of whack today. Anyway, but it was a wonderful day. The view was spectacular. The place that I went to, Kusher Lake, I think it's called. Um, and yeah, it was Waito-san saying he wishes he had an ounce of my energy. No, what I lack in energy, I make up for in sheer stupidity. I guess it's the thing about being on your own is that you've got nobody there to point out. You won't be able to eat, and you'll possibly run out of petrol, and you're dehydrated, and you're possibly making irrational decisions right now. Nobody's around to tell me that, and I've got a Dodge Charger, baby. I got to drive it. So yeah, I literally arrived 5 minutes before 4 o'clock when the guy who came back to pick up the car, I mean, again, a great service, Kite, I mean, I'd recommend it, not monetized or anything, but the guy literally showed up at the same time that I got back from a 2 hour drive. I cut it that fine at the same time that I handed the car back. And I was, thank you, thank you, thank you. That was awesome. But yeah, I am going to sleep so well tonight. So anyway, that was my day. Let's talk about drugs. I must say, living in Seattle, while I've always been like, Japan is just irrationally, drugs are bad, okay, okay, uh, and not really thinking things through and different types of drugs. And particularly, there are drugs which I think anyone would agree are harmful and have no, you know, have no sort of mitigating benefits or anything like that. And there are drugs that are just bad, bad. But in Japan, even Adderall is classified as methamphetamine. Of course, you can't get it there. You have other types of, of course, marijuana. The devil's lettuce is never going to be, the idea that, it's not as bad as alcohol, tobacco. There's no debate like that. If it's illegal, it's bad. MDMA is on that. Now, I think in this, as a spectrum of drugs go, I mean, particularly you go to places like Australia, probably everyone under 50 years old in Australia has had it. Certainly everyone that I've met has, a lot of people regularly. And people will talk about like how beneficial it is in some cases as well. The biggest risk of taking MDMA is it being contaminated by somebody putting something into it. And that's another reason to legalize it, of course. However, that said, in Japan, you might as well be Pablo Escobar himself if you have a single tablet in your possession. So yeah, Jessica Michibata, apparently, again, the circumstances here that she was caught, she was staying in a hotel with a friend and the friend had it ordered, and then the police came into the hotel room and found her with the MDMA. I mean, I guess she was having some kind of a good weekend. I don't know. But yeah, the result is that she was arrested for possession of an MDMA pill, and she's arrested, and her name is all over the media, like she's a huge drug kingpin on something that really, I think, in most other parts of the world would be a misdemeanor. Which is all getting to the point that, again, whatever your views, and even if you're right, I'm not, it's funny, Japan just isn't willing to have the debate about merits of drug legalization. Really is not a good idea to get into the stuff in Japan, and the consequences are pretty intense. Certainly you'll be deported as a foreigner if this happens. And I've met in New Zealand, there was a person I used to work with whose husband, she lived in New Zealand because her husband was caught, admittedly selling. He was a bartender, and he had been connected with people who were selling hashish. Admittedly bad by any country standards, at least. And he was deported. You think about what that means as a foreigner. So I would say, that said, I am in favor of legalization of drugs, at least based on harm or some sort of classification. Although I must say as well, I've talked about this in previous shows, living in Seattle has caused me to reconsider my opinions on drug legalization. Seattle's kind of the poster child for for not doing it, at least in the sense that I suppose when you might think that, ending prohibition of alcohol meant that, every free and sensible citizen is able to have a glass of Merlot with their steak on a Sunday evening. Um, you know, and that circumstance is fine. But if you don't think that it's also going to lead to thousands of drunks, lying around in the streets and in other parts of the city, and you don't have a plan for dealing with that, that's the flip side of uncontrolled release of prohibition. And that is definitely the situation. There are large parts of the city, inner city of Seattle, where I am, where and where marijuana is you can smell interchangeably with other drugs like fentanyl and opiates and so on. And the consequences for people, particularly people that already have mental illness, who are just sort of left there, and they're just like, there's nothing looking after them or anything like that. There's no care. There's no real consideration about ensuring sensible and responsible use. I don't know. It's just I think in a way it feels like it was just sort of legalized in a very poorly thought through way here. And honestly, I woke up last night. I went to sleep at 10 p.m. and I woke up. I mean, I suppose it makes sense to smell weed, at least if you smell it late at night. I mean, at least that feels sort of appropriate. But I woke up at like 4 o'clock in the morning with my room stinking of somebody was obviously doing some skunk or something in the room beside me. I was woken up by how bad the smell of hashish was at like 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, dude, I have to run 2 hours from now, and and I need to be able to see straight when I do it. So I don't know. I'm kind of like, but in any case, yeah. No matter what you think, I'm not saying that Japan is right, but I'm certainly saying that one, Japan thinks differently on this stuff. And two, even liberalization. I don't. I think if you want to make an argument against legalization, I think Seattle's the argument. You could use it as an illustration, or at least of a model to avoid. Anyway, it's been interesting. Into the comments, we see we've got more people rocking in. I do need to look up because I want to scroll. So remember, do what Lysander 45 there is doing. In fact, you don't even need the app mark. Just say Hiko-Simon, it will flash up orange and you can see me. Marcin Sebula, good to see you in the chat. Nice to see a new name, or at least a less familiar one. Mr. Cordy Chip commenting, I'm living my midlife crisis. Hell yes. Yeah, this is clearly midlife crisis. That's right. I have a series of muscle cars ready to order, or ready to rent. I'm going to totally get a Tesla. Yes. I mean, embrace it, right? It's going to happen. If it's going to happen anyway, you might as well try to make it a positive experience. So yes, indeed. Tokyo 503, sad news from Nagoya, where 2-year-old twins died falling from a 6th-floor window. Oh, I actually went through the news just before this and I did not see that. So that is terrible. Thank you for sharing that. But scrolling down. Who else we got in here? How many more weeks do I have left in this work posting? I've got 5. I'm here until the end of June. So still got a while yet. I'm still, in fact, I'm coming up on 2 months, I guess. I arrived on February 7. So it is racing by. The last couple of weeks I made a point. The first month I realized I hadn't really traveled anywhere. The real bucket list items I still have, the big ones, traveling to Oregon for a weekend and traveling to Vancouver or Canada for a weekend. So I guess 2 weekends I really want to do those things. And other than that, I'm pretty flexible. Of course, the other one is going down to Los Angeles and maybe planning some time off to travel around America a little bit. Would love to see some of you folks as well if you're in different parts of America. Be cool to do some meetups in other parts of the country. I would like to, I guess the outside bucket list is I would like to see some sort of a rocket launch. I think there's going to be a SpaceX Starship launch in April. Don't know if I can get to that, but there's some, there's the Vulcan Centaur launching later this year. So there's some rockets I definitely would love to see as well. So yeah, there's some ideas there. But yeah, Sadiq, hello from Miami. Would be great to see Miami as well, especially the rocket launches. I know at the opposite end of the Florida Peninsula there, but great to see you. We have Kerberos Tenshi. You don't do drugs except for caffeine. Yeah, I didn't do coffee until 30, but yeah, now I can't really live without it. Japanese love their alcohol, which is also a drug. They do, although Japan has mellowed out a lot on alcohol. The drinking culture here has eased a lot in the time that I've been in Japan, but it is still a thing. Shubhas, buenos dias, good to have you in here. Coffee kampai. Yeah, yeah, damn, I would love. You have no idea how badly I would like to try some Panamanian coffee right now. I'm hanging on a thread. It's 11 p.m. right now in NYC. I'm glad that you can make it. I know it is late there. I do appreciate you joining. You smell MJ a lot. You smell Michael Jackson a lot in traffic? Sorry, I think I know what you mean. In traffic? Well, that's a thing. Maybe New York has something. I don't drive in Seattle, and if Seattle's the same as that, maybe I'm glad that I don't. 10 p.m. in Panama. Okay, so you're 2 hours ahead. Actually, I must admit, I never thought about that. So, okay, you're ahead. Well, I'm glad. Wow, and you're drinking coffee late at night. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad that you can make it, and everybody else. Anyway, yeah, the redwoods and so on, the national parks are definitely something that I want to see. Kurisachi, I don't have a midlife crisis. I have midday crises every day. That's a good response. Oh, and Sainted Sir clicking the like. Yes, please. That's the only thing I do the show for is the likes. Validate me, please. 18 people watching, 10 likes. So I would appreciate the likes. And I'm going to move on to the next story. I went to go and watch the WBC final. Did people here watch it? I'm not a baseball fan, honestly, but it's a bit like the Olympics. It's one of the WBC. What I like about it is it's an occasion where, yeah, I can sort of support Australia. You know, I'd support New Zealand if they had a team in it. Generally, if New Zealand doesn't have a team, I'll be open to giving some friendly moral support to Australia. And Australia did okay, actually. New Zealand does have a team in Australia's Pro Baseball League. Yeah, it was a good occasion, and two things were clear. One, how for Japan the WBC is like the most important sporting event. You know, it's one of the biggest sporting events for Japan. It really meant a lot to Japan to win that. And how in America nobody cares. This is literally the off season. This is kind of a bit of a lark, I guess, for the. I mean, they all star, they had big name players. They were all major league players. There are some big names there. But and the final showdown, the final inning of the final game between teammates Otani and Trout, and again, I had no idea. I didn't have the knowledge to appreciate this, but thanks to Twitter, I found out. Trout's only struck out 24 times in 6,000 times at bat, or some ridiculous number. So the fact that Otani did that to him in the final inning of the WBC, after walking the player before him, after running a base in 4 seconds and hitting immediately before, it was kind of ridiculous. So it was a great game. I was in a large sports bar in a very techie neighborhood where a lot of the tech companies are here. I was afraid that maybe if I loudly supported Japan in a sports bar, that might be a problem. However, I discovered I am in Seattle and not Boston. And nobody cares. Nobody cares. There was one other person in the entire bar at the opposite end of the bar. I couldn't even see them, who I could hear clapping when America did something good. And I clapped louder and shouted louder for Japan at the opposite end of the bar. And when they won, well, the waiter guy came up to me and said, yeah, I was supporting Japan too. So, yeah, at least in the tech neighborhood, I mean, we're admittedly half the people who live in the area where I am in Seattle aren't even American. So, there was like loud conversations happening. Nobody was watching this amazing game. But I was watching it, and it was exciting. I grabbed a New Zealand friend, dragged a New Zealand friend along to watch it. And, yeah, he admitted as well. Neither of us are big baseball fans. It was a great game. I hope that the rest of you enjoyed it, or got a chance to see it anyway. But yeah, also, yeah, that's right. I went to a Japanese language, so again, a lack of human contact and midlife crisis and everything. I found there's an app called Meetup, which has like clubs and social events and stuff in in Seattle, where I think I mentioned I went to go to a Spanish night, speaking Spanish for a few hours, which was fun. After I did that, and I thought how much I appreciated the Central and South Americans that were there and willing to let people speak terrible Spanish to them for 2 hours. I thought, yeah, I should totally, I should go along to the Japanese nights and help people practice their Japanese. So I did. I went along to a ramen place. In fact, I might have mentioned this last week. It was, nice to meet people. It was nice to be able to help people, actually be in that position to help and encourage people to have an interest in Japan. But I have decided I'm not going to eat any more Japanese food here in Seattle. Not because it's bad. It's not actually bad. It is slightly different. They make stuff differently here. The food preparation laws are different in America. That you can't make ramen. You can't prepare the broth the same way. They just leave it to stew for days. You're not allowed to do that in America. So essentially, what you get is something that tastes like a good, like not cheap, not cup noodles, but it tastes like you can get really good quality fresh noodles from the supermarket in Japan with the pack that you put into water with the noodles. And it's good, but it's not something that you'd pay anything more than, like you can get really good artisanal ramen for $8 in Japan. So why would I pay $20 plus tax plus a tip for something that's like it's from the supermarket that honestly should be like $3 or $4? So I don't want to be a snob, so I'm not going to eat so much of that stuff anymore. But it was a really good night out. But they had this game on when I was they had the semi-final on, which I got to watch during that. That was a lot of fun. Cobra sent you, if you go to Florida, try Cuban coffee. You'll send me a video about that later. Cuban coffee sounds good. Sadiq says, in order to speak Spanish, I have to go to Florida. I'd love to go to Florida, except I'll have to speak like Scarface or something. Although I've seen videos pointing out that apparently you talk about criminal Spanish accents. Spanish are very big on their accents, right? And the Cuban accent is very distinct, very distinctive. And if you want to learn it, do not watch Scarface. Do not watch Al Pacino, who doesn't speak Spanish, as I understand. And he kind of he tried to pick up Cuban, but it was terrible. It's a little bit like Narcos. I love Narcos, but something kept sounding off to me. Like he didn't sound Colombian at all to me. And yeah, it turns out he's not even a native Spanish speaker. He's a Brazilian guy, and he was speaking like Spanish with a Brazilian Portuguese accent, which you can totally hear when you realize what he's doing. So the idea that while Colombians are not necessarily proud of Pablo Escobar, he is a notable figure. So again, it's like having having someone with a distinctly Brazilian accent playing Pablo Escobar is very difficult for people who know what Colombians sound like and what Pablo Escobar sounds like to accept. But Puerto Rican super fast. I love this. I love the Central American accents where they remove the S off the end and stuff. But I should get down there and practice. Indeed, it's another reason to get down to Florida, and I guess you can do it pretty cheap as well. Mr. Cordy Chip, $20 plus tax, which is about $3 or $4, plus tip, which is now 25% generally in Seattle. So it was a $32, $32, which translates to over 4,000 yen ramen. You can get excellent ramen for 1,200 yen. Most ramen places, you get 800-900 yen. This is 4,000 yen for supermarket pack ramen. In Japan, I wouldn't pay 400 yen for. Which, if you think about it that way, it was 10 times overvalued. Which is why, but you know what? I want to support Japanese businesses, so I don't want to badmouth it. It was fine, and it was consistent with the price of food here in Seattle. 25%, yes, Mr. Cordy Chap, you get a choice. Apparently because of COVID, the choice of tip has now changed from 10, 15, 20 to be 20, 25, 30. I don't know if anyone ever taps on 30%, but apparently you are considered some sort of failure of a human being if you tip less than 20%. So yeah, and I always tap for Japanese restaurants a little bit more. But yeah. That is just include it in the charge. I won't get into the tipping thing. It is what it is. And now it's all electronic. Now you don't have to do the math for it. That makes it easier. Anyway, carrying on. Oh, let's go back here. Dual citizenship, my bad take. Okay, I'd like to apologize to the internet for my incredibly bad take on dual citizenship in Japan. My brain is strange. My brain works that whenever I see something, even that I agree with, I immediately think, when you see something that's like impossible to disagree with, I think, what's the opposite to this? Like, it's partly to check myself, but I also like to be that. I was that smart ass kid in elementary school that whenever the teacher said, Australia is the biggest island in the world, I was like, Miss, it's not really an island. Greenland's the biggest island. Australia's a subcontinent. I was that kid. I was the kid They would always argue with the teacher and try as hard as possible. It does make you smarter when you're thinking, how can I argue against everything? I was basically contrarian. That's how my brain works. That's why I do the profession that I do. And the funny thing is, I'll argue even when I completely agree with the point being made. I'll still make the counterpoint. I'll make points as to things I think Trump has done that are good. There are some people who are just unwilling to accept, balance, and that's what I like. I like to do this about all things. Dual citizenship. I completely agree with dual citizenship. I would love to be a dual citizen of Japan and New Zealand. I'd love to be a multi-citizen of, Australia, and my dad's a British citizen from Fiji. So I don't know. I'll take all the citizenships. I would love to be. I've lived most of my life in Japan. I'd love to be able to vote in Japan. Honestly, I know I can get Australian citizenship if I want it. I don't really just want it that much, but it's nice to know I can get it based on having an Australian parent. Um, but yeah, I think it sort of makes sense, and yeah, and when people say in a modern, global world where people move between countries and countries need to compete to attract, talented immigrants and so on. In the modern world, it's practically a human right that, you should be able to, where it's appropriate, where your personal circumstances, are such of so many people that the idea that Japan requires people to only have one citizenship, and that if you, at least when you become an adult, you can be born like, for example, kids with international marriages. You can be born and have my son has a New Zealand passport and a Japanese passport, and the Japanese approach is, the law says at 20 you have to decide to either, get rid of your foreign passport or get rid of your Japanese passport, but it's not enforced. So basically, if you're born with multiple citizenship in Japan, it's kind of a don't ask, don't tell approach, that you can keep it. But what they are very strict about is that if you, as an adult, wish to become Japanese, you have to prove that you have renounced your foreign citizenship. And the naturalized Japanese, most of whom are Americans, they had to go through renouncing American citizenship, which is pretty intense. It actually sounds almost as intense or even more intense than becoming a Japanese citizen, which there used to be more stringent tests for and so on. That in itself is kind of a story. There's some blogs from the people who have done it. And yeah, the reason I wouldn't become Japanese is I just don't want the hassle or see the benefit. I can pass on a New Zealand passport if I have it. So, but there again, if I could become a Japanese citizen while retaining my New Zealand citizenship, I would love that, and I would do that. And I agree, it is modern and it is consistent with the current world, and I think it is something that. But here's the thing: I don't think it's I don't think it's a human right, and I don't think Japan is wrong or backward per se for not having dual citizenship. The reason is, and this is the bad take which I gave that a lot of people condemn me for, is even though I agree with dual citizenship, what I said is this. The characteristics of countries which are most liberal towards citizenship laws are countries that essentially, well, I think I used the term colonialization, but making it even, countries that have a large population of people from immigrant backgrounds tended to have started out as colonies. And here's the thing, when you think about, America, apparently only recently, I didn't realize it was more recent for America that it recognized dual citizenship. But, for Australia, New Zealand, for countries that had, for countries that were part of empires, the British Empire, the French Empire, or whatever, when you are the country in power, when the French government is controlling the governments of these, African colonies and these newly sort of, quasi-independent countries and so on, and same with the British Empire, it's kind of natural that you want to encourage people from Britain who moved to New Zealand to be comfortable becoming New Zealanders and contributing to New Zealand citizenship, and not forcing them to give up British citizenship or to give up their family ties back to the UK. So basically, if you're setting up a country where you want to bring more of your people over into the country, it makes total sense that you would be as flexible as possible. You would presume that everyone is loyal, and that you would allow people to retain the old country citizenship with the new citizenship. And it's a way that you enable mass migration. The thing is, in countries like New Zealand, Australia, Canada, the immigration laws were decided by the governments that were the successor governments of the colonial governments, whose purpose was to bring as many people in as possible to dominate and take over the country from the people who were there before. And I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that Maori and Australian or American First Nations have ever been consulted on whether they're for allowing unfettered immigration from other countries to come and take over their stuff. And when you have the flip side, another big factor why Japan doesn't have dual citizenship is it comes down to China. And, it's racist and nationalist and wrong, but there is a fear of mass Chinese immigration getting footholds in Japan where they could have. It's always a security concern that comes up. People are uncomfortable saying it out loud, even, but it's the unspoken reason behind it. And again, we can condemn that, but remember, America, like the west coast of America, when it only had a few white settlers, and at the same time when New Zealand had a very small population, and even Australia, they passed these incredibly racist laws against Chinese immigration because they were afraid of that there will be more Chinese immigrants come in before white immigrants would come in. And, so long as the right people are in power, it's easy to be liberal about immigration. Now there isn't so much of a fear of being taken over, at least in America and New Zealand. But for a long time, they had incredibly racist laws against this. Japan is right beside China, and Japan still has attitudes which are wrong, and they are very similar to those attitudes of the early 20th century and late 19th century in other parts of the Pacific. But countries that have not been colonized generally are not as liberal about the idea that, we should just let everybody come in and take over. And I think the idea that Japan is backward for thinking like that, and that we are progressive, no, we stole a bunch of countries. Both sides of my family are from colonized countries, and I am the stock of immigrants who came into countries that were colonized really without the full consent and assent and control of the people who were the ones who should have had the first say, right? So I think I acknowledge that Japan's position is a reflection of the fact it wasn't taken over, which is a good thing. And if Japan wants to modernize and liberalize, that's up to them. But having white people from dominated colonial countries lecture Japan that it's backward for not being more open on immigration, like they're coming from the moral high ground, historically they're not. To which I was told that's an incredibly bad take. To which I said, yeah, it is. And actually, I disagree with myself. I'm all for dual citizenship. But I think that's because I'm white and part of a country that was colonized. I reflect the badness of my own position agreeing with them. I don't think... And while I could say that it is a morally better position overall, it's a better result to recognize dual citizenship. At the same time, it's not just inherently to say it's backward or wrong is, to me, just such a condescending white putting down non-white people mindset, which the same mindset of colonial people lecturing countries that they ran into that everything they did was different was wrong, which I don't like, which is why I live in Japan. But sometimes they are wrong. I mean, that's the thing. Sometimes they are wrong. And again, I say all of this while completely disagreeing with what I'm saying myself. But I recognize this for my own convenience. So so this is where I was told online that some people were very disappointed with my very bad take, to which I say, sorry, it's what I do. I have many takes, and many of them are bad, but that's my take on dual citizenship in Japan. I do hope... Oh, and by the way, the case which triggered this was there was a 75-year-old Japanese lawyer who moved to America and took American citizenship, and was shocked to find out that in direct accordance with the Japanese citizenship law, they were stripped of their Japanese citizenship, to which they are suing in the Japanese Supreme Court, saying that it's a violation of their human rights, that they should ever lose their Japanese citizenship. But it's in the law of, like Japanese people can change the laws, they can vote. I can't, but they can. The democratically elected government of Japan has a citizenship law that says, if you go to America as an adult and you decide to take up a different citizenship, you lose your Japanese citizenship. And this person was a lawyer. They can't say that they didn't know. They're being a smart aleck and they're suing. And on the one hand, while I hope that they win, in a way, and they say that it's unconstitutional to not have multiple citizenships, on the other hand, what kind of doofus lawyer can say that this was an inherent human right and say that they didn't know the law? It's ridiculous. So anyway, yes, I have an early life, midlife, and late life crisis all happening at the same time. Back into the comments. Cobra Stenchi, in Europe, dual citizenship is completely fine. Oh, of course, and within Europe, honestly, at least within Europe itself, it's barely, it's questionable whether being a dual Austrian and German citizen really means anything at all. Although many of the countries, Switzerland, in Europe, but not the EU, of course, but Switzerland, Austria, there are many of the countries that didn't recognize dual citizenship and still don't. I think Switzerland is one that still doesn't. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but some of them, until very recently anyway, were European countries, and European countries that didn't have empires. Countries that had empires, all okay with multiple citizenship because they have tons of immigration and they themselves have tons of immigration. But countries that didn't have large overseas empires, like Austria and Switzerland, said, hey, one is enough. Which is funny because it's the same place for countries that weren't colonized. But anyway. Yeah, and I have to pay taxes wherever I am anyway. So yes. As usual, I am now crunched for time, so let's speed up. A Tokyo ramen restaurant has apparently said that they will kick out any customers looking at their mobile phones while eating. It's prohibited to watch YouTube phones, basically because they sit around wasting time. Some people saying this is the Japanese version of Seinfeld's soup Nazi. I suppose the ramen Nazi. I don't know if there's another... Is there an equivalent Japanese term? The ramen kenpeitai? I don't know what you'd call that. To which I respond that if the ramen's good, fine. I could respect that, honestly. I mean, this is the thing. You put an anti-customer rule like that in there, it's kind of a flex. It's kind of saying, my ramen's so good, you're going to take what I give you, eat it fast, pay, get out, and let the next person come and eat it so I can make more money. But I also believe some of these artisans who do these ramen places genuinely care about the experience of eating it. And, again, you come to America, I do complain. You order a sandwich, you want a ham and cheese sandwich, and you have to make 20 choices. What kind of bread? What kind of sauce? What kind of topping? Do you want any extras? Do you want to take the ham out? Do you want to have double ham? Do you want to have what type of cheese do you want? We've got 10 types of cheese. It takes like 10 minutes to order a ham sandwich here. And I feel like, and then you got to pay a 25% tip. And I tell people, I feel like I deserve the tip after I make all the choices that they make you go through. And I know in America, choice is associated with service. In Japan, no choice is associated with service. You go into a place with an artisan who knows what he's doing, you will eat the ham sandwich. Yes, thank you very much. Here's the money. You will not watch YouTube while eating. Fine. If you don't like it, don't go. If it's bad ramen and he's putting rules like that, that's not going to last very long. But if they're a good place and if there are genuinely like lines outside regularly and, it's holding people up, I'm all for this. I don't think this is even if it is a soup Nazi equivalent situation, it actually almost makes me curious to see, is the ramen worth it? That's it. Typically when I do eat ramen or go out in Tokyo or here, I totally watch YouTube. I totally take my mobile phone. But if it was good ramen, I would go along with it. I appreciate that the good service and simplicity and everything just being laid out for you. To me, that's good service. Again, I've been in Japan for too long. What about the Japanese Empire? Brad F. Yeah, how is that going? How is that going? There, of course, the complex situation. Well, you know what happened during the Japanese Empire? Well, Japan simplified it. Koreans were Japanese citizens, as were Taiwanese. Manchurians, I don't know the situation with Manchurians. But you know what? It wouldn't have surprised me if there was Manchurian citizenship and Japanese, tens of millions of Japanese who lived in Manchuria, might have had some dual citizenship arrangement. That would have made total sense. Obviously, that's moot now. In fact, the Koreans who were Japanese citizens were stateless for like 20 years after the war. But that was largely, a consequence of the occupation. Yeah, I think during the empire, and if the empire had won, situations would probably produce different answers. But right now, again, because the empire hasn't gone so well, I think that's where it's gone. Sainted Sir, good to hear that I'm having a good time here in the States. Yeah, good night. I know it's late for you, Sainted Sir, so I do appreciate the comments and have a good week there. Yeah, next one we've got interesting. I've talked multiple times about the problem of all these abandoned houses, and yet in spite of these houses being abandoned, which should be like, there should be free cheap housing for everyone, and that should make it easy and enticing for people to move out into the countryside. they're expensive and they're really hard to get hold of, which is reinforcing these ghost towns that are happening in Japan. And it strikes me as something that policy should be able to do more with, either to nationalize the houses and knock them down and redevelop them, or make them cheaper somehow. And so they've decided to at least incentivize people who are holding on to these properties, and not doing anything with them. Often people who inherit the houses, for example, but selling them as a hassle, and they just let them get run down. They're going to start imposing taxes on abandoned or uninhabited properties. A large tax for abandoned properties, smaller taxes even for uninhabited investment properties, and so on. So they're looking to incentivize use of our real estate. I think it's better than nothing. I've seen a lot of criticism of this idea as being too simplistic, like just tax it as being just sort of a lazy, easy way of dealing with it, but it's better than what they've been doing, so I hope that works. I had my Japan anniversary this week. March 23rd is my Japan anniversary. 24th, I arrived in Japan on the stint on March 23rd, 1999. This photo, actually, I spent some months in Japan. I, of course, came to Japan multiple times, and I was in Japan for 3 or 4 months on a working holiday the year before. And I've done other trips, so I've actually been in Japan for longer than 24 years, although I guess right now the time has taken off. It's weird to do a Japan anniversary outside of Japan. That is from 1998. That is the year before I came to Japan, so I guess I was about 22, probably 22 in this photo. As you can see, Japan has taken no toll on me whatsoever. I look exactly the same now as I did in 1998. Can barely tell the difference. So obviously, Japan has preserved all of my youthful energy and good looks, as you can see. But yeah, it's kind of interesting reflecting on the 25 years next year. That's just going to be a huge thing. But I must say, I came to Japan because it is interesting. And 24 years later, I still find it as constantly interesting and fun as I did all the way back then. And the fact that prices are still the same, and cost of living and everything, and how impossible it is to live in places like here. Or in Australia, or places like that, seeing how inflation and cost of living's gotten out of control. Japan's, while it's kind of slipping into a sort of a developing country status, it's a comfortable decline, which I think has always been the goal of the government. So I'm looking forward to going back as well. But another recurring topic on the show. Of course, Japan doesn't really have a proper family law system, and the result is that in cases of divorce, Japan doesn't have a system for recognizing or enforcing custody orders, joint custody orders. Typically, in most Western countries, when people divorce, one parent will be a custodial parent, the other custody parent will have access to the child certain days a week, which means that both parents can be in their life. The cultural norm in Japan has been that you divorce the kids and the spouse. In the case of a divorce in the sole custody, which of course contributes to the problem of parental child abductions, which has been a huge problem. Even though Japan has finally ratified the treaty on civil aspects of parental child abduction, because Japan doesn't have an enforcement system, it means that it still is a big problem. And for Australia, which has a lot of international marriages with Japan, it means that there are tons of cases still where divorced parents are unable to find their kids or access their kids, which is, I think, demonstrated as being bad for the kids and bad for the parents as well. It's one of the things I keep repeating on here. Remember that apparently the percentage of international marriages that fail is above 50%. And if that happens and your spouse is Japanese, the laws are pretty harsh, and a lot of people, I feel particularly bad for people who end up in these situations and they don't realize that this is the case. So it's one of those things that if you get into it, you really, this is kind of, I suppose, a risk, or it's something to understand about Japan. It's a reason that you want to stay on good terms with your spouse to be able to work out something informally. You can work out private arrangements for joint custody, but there's no enforcement system. So you can't access your kid just as part of rights. So say, for example, your wife or your husband takes custody of the kids. You rely on the good faith of the other spouse to be able to see the kids, which I think would influence how you go through the divorce and separation process if you do that. And certainly if you fall out on bad terms, as frequently happens in divorces, this is what happens. So it's a pretty sad situation, and it's good to see. I think there was a case brought last year in the Supreme Court saying that Japan's lack of a family law custody enforcement system was itself kind of a violation of rights of Japanese people, and that it was Japan was bound by the Constitution to have a proper system of family law. which was found to not be unconstitutional. They lost that case, but the Japanese government being under pressure to develop a proper family law system is a good thing. I think international pressure. This is a case where it makes sense. All the big tech layoffs happening at the moment, some pointing out that Fujitsu and other Japanese companies, it gives an opportunity for them to hire these engineers that are looking for work at the moment, which is true. Although that said, if you're, I mean, obviously having a job is better than not having a job. Of course, I suppose Rochelle Kopp is more the authority on, what it's like to work in Japanese companies. It's not easy working in Japanese companies, and they don't pay as well either. So I think there's, on the one hand, there's an opportunity for Japanese companies, but they shouldn't let that pass over the fact that, they still really, really don't know how to treat or compete for tech talent. And, they don't want to squander that because Japan is behind, frankly, when it comes to modern IT. There are smart IT engineers in Japan who figure things out on their own, but the big IT companies, the mega IT companies, NTT, Hitachi, Fujitsu, NEC, and so on, their businesses are still based on 30, 40-year-old technology, mainframes, legacy on-premises systems, and so on. And, these AI engineers are going to come into these, they don't have cultures that recognize and apply talent. They assume everybody is a blank slate that they bring in and train, at least under their traditional systems. So, these Japanese companies have a lot of change to do themselves, not only to attract, but also to retain and take advantage of these employees. But I hope that they do it. Maybe it's a good overall opportunity for the whole economy. The Japanese government has released guidelines on refugee status recognition for the first time. They're making clear that they're doing this, they're doing this in response to the amount of criticism that they get for only accepting like 20 refugees a year out of 20,000 applications. They emphasize that they're not releasing these guidelines in order to make it easier to be recognized or to increase the number of refugees. They're going to keep it to 20, but they're saying that the 20 that are approved should be recognized. It takes 2 or 3 years sometimes for those 20 or 30 refugees to actually be recognized. And often they have to, like everybody is automatically failed the first time and they have to appeal twice to get through the whole process, and it takes years, and it's very, very difficult. So they're saying that they're going to streamline and document how those 20 valid cases can be more quickly identified and processed, and how they can also quickly identify and process the 19,980 cases that they will reject. So one step forward and 19,000 steps backwards. Baby steps, I suppose you could say. It's not really a positive take. That is the car I was driving. Midlife crisis me, yes. It was a fun day. I was having fun. And final one is, after the run. I didn't actually wear this during the run. I should have, actually, but I got it after the run. But it's a souvenir from the run, and I quite like it. So I put on, I hid my white legs because I've had multiple complaints about them. Still too cold. The cherry blossoms are not out here yet. It still is freezing cold in Seattle, but at University of Washington, it's a beautiful campus, and the cherry blossoms, you can see, are going to be spectacular in a couple of weeks. They're starting to bloom now anyway, so it was really lovely walking around afterwards, and I did get to do some cherry blossom, some hanami, although nothing like Tokyo yet. Oh, and there are the legs that everyone's complaining about. That's me at the finish line. And look at that time. 4 minutes 29 per kilometer. I'd be happy doing that on a 5K. I did that for 21 Ks, and now I can't walk. But 1 hour 30 on a half marathon, that's respectable. That's actually, like, for me, I looked at my heart rate information. It seemed to be registered that I was on the verge of a heart attack for about 40 minutes of that run. It was kind of alarming looking at the health data. But I felt good. Freezing cold, but other than that. So it was a good day. Anyway, those are all the topics. Any final looking at the comments? Lysander 45, price is still the same, wage is still the same, yes indeed. Leaving Japan in 2 weeks because after 2 years you realize that you need to do a lot more prep work before you come here, getting a driver's license, etc. Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry that you have to go and feel like you need to come back, but yeah, if that's what makes sense, I think that's what makes sense. Edo, by the way, good to see you in here. What's the point of a menu if you basically have to build your order every time? Well, that's what I think. And the price is like 2/3 of the actual price that you'll end up paying on whatever it is, because it doesn't include tax and it doesn't include tip. So yes, I have complaints. Generally speaking, though, the food quality in Seattle is good, and the food prices are expensive, but they are consistent. So from that perspective, yeah. So long as I'm eating like American food and it tastes good and it's healthy, which healthy, good American food exists. And in Seattle, there's quite a lot of it. But eating anything that I know what the regular price in Japan is, psychologically doesn't work. So yeah, that's the trick there. Anyway, thank you for keeping me company. I do appreciate if you like. Have a good week, everybody. It's amazing to me that I've been here pretty much maskless. Although I guess downtown's pretty empty, so perhaps that's probably why. But yeah. So far, doing my best to stay healthy. Most of my health problems have been self-inflicted injuries. So all of you as well, do keep safe. Do take care. I'll be follow me on Twitter. I'll be back here as always, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time next week. And have a good week, everybody. I'll talk to you all later. Boom. Peace. Oh, how do I end the stream? That's right, over here. Okay, see you later. Bye.